Welcome back everyone to Showbiz India, and it is indeed my pleasure to welcome Dr. Sanjay Gupta to Showbiz India and to LA. It's great to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
And tell me now, you are launching Kahani Movement. In your own words, what is behind this movement?
You know, we started to realize after some time ago that there's so many tremendous stories of the Indian experience in this country and other countries. People leaving their homes and everything they own, the people they love, and trying to set up a life somewhere else. I think for too long we took those stories for granted. We talked about them around the dinner table, and we heard the same stories over and over and over again. And I think it just one day sort of clicked to us that my kids, my grandkids are never going to get to hear those stories that are truly unique stories. That experience is a unique one. What Indians and other South Asians went through when they immigrated to this country. And I started to think, you know, how do we, in some sort of consistent, reliable way, archive these stories so they can be around forever? Not just the stories, but the pictures, the video, to be able to see their great-grandfather 50, 60 years from now will be an amazing thing. And that's really what we wanted to do. And the Kahani Movement, we thought, was the best way to do it, to create a living, breathing website.
And what is your vision through this?
You know, I don't know that we planned out a vision, because ultimately we want this to be something that is very user-friendly and everyone starts contributing to. I have thought that you know, there's a perception in this country and in other countries outside of India that Indians are all homogenous, that they've had the same experience, they do the same things, they're brought up the same way. And as you know, and as I know, that's simply not true. So to the extent that we can show the heterogeneity of the Indian people, how their experiences are different, unified by certain things, but very different in other ways, is something that I think is an important theme. So whether that means creating little mini documentaries later on that we show at festivals like this, or just show you know, to various gatherings, or if it's just something that takes on a life of its own on the web, we're not entirely sure, but we're going to see how it goes.
Well, it sounds like there are going to be some fantastic stories for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the things that we've already heard are amazing, and I think what is most amazing is the stories on an individual level. So I don't know how often you've had a chance to ask your parents or your grandparents some tough questions, questions that maybe Indians don't ask their parents or grandparents very often. What their early years were like, you know, what their marriage was like in the beginning, how they dealt with some of the cultural obstacles of living in a new country. These are things that we all sort of know must have happened, but how often do you have that candid conversation with someone that you love? Sometimes it's easier to have that conversation with an entirely strange person or a stranger. With your family, though, it's more difficult. So I think the conversations are going to be quite remarkable even within family units.
Now, speaking about you, you are a neurosurgeon, an author, an Emmy-winning, award-winning reporter. For some people, only one of them is enough for a lifetime. You have all three. How do you balance everything?
You know, I think it's just important to be very realistic in terms of what I can and cannot do on any given day. So you know, I have a practice where I operate every Monday and every other Friday. I write on Tuesdays. I do a lot of my television work Wednesdays and Thursdays. So it's just a very structured week. I don't have a lot of downtime anymore, but you know, it's kind of the way I like it.
You're a very, very busy man, obviously.
Yeah.
So out of all the three, which is something that you would say is your first love?
Medicine.
Medicine.
Medicine remains my first love, and you know, in some ways, I think I'm reminded of that now that I can step outside of it a little bit. I think when you're in medicine and you're immersed in it every single day and you don't have any other outside activities, sometimes you forget to appreciate how much, you know, you offer your patients and the good things you do for people. Because I can go into this world of journalism, and because I can also travel to a lot of countries where I see suffering, unbelievable suffering, I'm reminded how important being a doctor is. So it was and remains my first love.
Now, speaking of medicine, recently you were offered to be the Surgeon General by Obama, and as a South Asian, we felt very proud that you were offered that position. Any particular reason you decided not to?
You know, I think that, well, first of all, it was very flattering, and it was a very tough decision. I spent a lot of time with the president talking about it. And for me, it really came down to a couple of things. One is I didn't want to be a commuting dad for 4 or 8 years, depending on what happens. I just think I didn't think that I would look back upon that 10 years from now and think that that was a good decision. I think I would have missed too much of my personal family life. And I think the other thing is, you know, as I said, being a doctor is important to me, and ironically, I wouldn't have been able to practice neurosurgery anymore as Surgeon General. And you know, if you're a primary care doctor or you're not operating, you can probably go back to that field. But if I'm away from the operating room for 4 years, I'm essentially abandoning my surgical career. And I'm not, you know, I'm in my late 30s, and I just thought that was too early in life to do it. Most people who take that job are either at retirement or near retirement, so I just think it was bad timing.
I see. And what would you say to those perhaps who'd be lucky enough from our community and being offered that position? What piece of advice would you give them?
What I would advise the next Surgeon General is to remember that you are the nation's doctor. And you need to be out there talking about issues of health that are important to the nation. Unfortunately, as things stand now, most people can't name the Surgeon General. They don't know who that person is. And it should change, I think, with the next person. There should be a position where that person is out there constantly reminding people about healthy habits and how to make this a healthier nation overall.
Now, you have worked at the White House before. Tell me your experience.
I worked for the First Lady in 97, 98 for First Lady Clinton at that time. Now Secretary Clinton, for Senator Clinton in between. She's had a busy few years. It was terrific. You know, I worked very closely with her. I wrote a lot of speeches. I was involved in special projects that she was interested in. In some ways, being a White House Fellow, which is what I was, is the lowest rung on the ladder. But it is a fascinating experience and a really good insight into the executive branch of government. I think for me, it really helped carve my future life after that time.
Now, switching gears a bit, let me talk about your book. What was the inspiration behind the book? Obviously, you went around and met a lot of very renowned scientists for this book, I understand.
You know, I'm lucky to have a job where I travel all over the world and do stories and meet interesting people, sort of like you do. And one of the things that struck me was that as I've traveled to all these countries, there's a lot of places that people live their lives better, longer, and more fulfilling than we do in the United States. And I was curious as to what were those qualities that seemed to be in common among some of the longest lived societies. Places like Okinawa, Sardinia, what do they do differently? And that's what I really started to write about. I met all these people, I wrote their individual stories, but then started to develop common themes that I thought might be useful to the average person reading a book like this. Everything from the best sort of diets, to the best sort of exercises, to the best mental attitude, to the preservation of the family unit and how important that is in terms of long life. One quick example, in the United States, which is unlike South Asia or India, when you turn 65, you're effectively discarded from your professional life. You're retired. Oftentimes, unfortunately, you're discarded from your personal life as well. Your children or your grandchildren may not spend as much time with you as you would like. It's very different in a lot of other cultures. Okinawa, for example, as you get older, you're more respected, you're more revered, you're incorporated into life. And the Japanese have a special word for that called ikigai, which means sense of purpose. And as you get older, you have greater ikigai. You have a reason to live, a will to live every day, which I think is part of the reason they have the highest number of centenarians, people who live into their hundreds, of any place on the planet. It's simply that ikigai. And it was stories like that that really fascinated me and I wanted to write about.
That's very interesting. So just some basic steps, what would you tell people to follow to lead a healthy life?
Well, you know, I think when it comes to diet, I think you don't have to waste a lot of money taking supplements and vitamins. You can try and eat the healthiest diet, and the way that I do it is I eat 7 different colored foods a day. So it's a little game that I play with myself. If I eat 7 different colored foods, I'm usually getting all the good stuff from the various food groups. As far as exercise goes, I was always a very aerobic sort of person. I did a lot of running, I played a lot of aerobic sports. But when I started adding upper body training to my exercise routine, I found that it did a lot for me. It improves my posture, improves my ability to inspiratory capacity, my breathing. But I think most importantly, as you get older, pneumonia is one of the biggest killers. And if you can have stronger lungs and more what they call inspiratory capacity, you're likely to survive a stay in the hospital or a nursing home. And then when it comes to attitude, I think this idea of waking up every morning and for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes reminding yourself what you're here for. What is your purpose here? You know, define it how you will, but define it in some way so that you don't ever go through a day where you didn't know what you were supposed to do that day. You wake up and you have some purpose in life. I think that really is settling for the mind and for the body overall. So I wrote a whole book about that, but those are 3 little pearls.
Yeah. Well, it's great speaking to you.
Thank you.
And we look forward to hopefully seeing you again very soon.
Thank you
Wish
very
you
much.
continued success.
Good luck to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.